All right, good afternoon, everyone. We'll call to order the regular meeting of the City of Murfreesboro Board of Zoning Appeals for July 27th, 2016. The first item on our agenda is new business. We'll start with sign variance request. The first application is S16046 by Ian Phillips of Everwood at the Avenue LLC, requesting a variance from Section 25 1/4 24A22 of the Murfreesboro Sign Ordinance, which prohibits a sign being placed in or over a public utility or drainage easement. This is for property located at 915 Robert Rose Drive. If you would review that for us, Ms. Kerr.
Thank you, Chairman Young, members of the board. The applicant, Ian Phillips with CIP Construction Company representing Everwood at the Avenue, is requesting a variance from Section 25 1/4 24A22 of the City of Murfreesboro Sign Ordinance, which prohibits a sign placed in or over any public utility or drainage easement without the consent of the easement holder and the Board of Zoning Appeals approval. The sign location again is at 915 Robert Rose Drive and is within the Gateway District Overlay Zone number 1. The applicant is requesting permission to erect one internally illuminated freestanding wall sign with 38 square foot of display area and an overall height of 7 foot. The sign will be located within a 40-foot public utility easement. The agreement for a sign in a City of Murfreesboro easement has been signed by the Murfreesboro Electric Department, Water and Sewer Department, the Director of Building and Codes, and the City Engineer. An agreement for a sign in an easement letter has also been submitted from AT&T and Atmos Energy with no objections to the sign placement. Consolidated Utility District submitted an agreement for the sign to be installed in the easement with the requirement of a 10-foot minimum separation from water lines. Due to the sensitivity of placement in regards to the easement and water line, staff required that the sign be located on site by a Tennessee registered engineer or surveyor, and that form for the certification of sign placement has been provided already to staff. The applicant will comply with all other setbacks and regulations. And Mr. Ian Phillips is here today if you have any questions for he or I.
Thank you. Any questions for staff or for the applicant at this point? Anything the applicant would like to add?
No, sir.
Okay. At this time, we'll conduct a public hearing. If anyone's present wishing to speak for or against this application, if you'd come forward and state your name and address, we'll get your comments on the record. Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for further discussion or a motion.
If no further questions, I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I assume those include the staff comments?
Yes.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That application has been approved. Next, we'll move to variance requests. Our application next is Z16047 by Sean Guth of Lowson Associates, representing Murfreesboro Parks and Recreation Department, requesting a 40-foot variance from Section 18G4 of the Murfreesboro Zoning Ordinance, which prohibits lighting fixtures from exceeding 20 feet in height in non-residential developments with structures 35 feet or less in height for property in the Park District located at 1007 Gulf Lane. Mr. Anthony, if you'd review that for us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, board members. The Murfreesboro Parks and Recreation Department wishes to install 16 new lighting fixtures at Old Fort Park, located at 1007 Gulf Lane. The new fixtures would illuminate 8 tennis courts, which currently have no lighting for nighttime play. The fixtures would range from 50 feet to 60 feet in height. Section 18G4 of the Murfreesboro Zoning Ordinance limits fixture height to 20 feet for non-residential developments with structures 35 feet or less in height. The applicant requests a 40-foot variance from this requirement. The applicant contends that the 20-foot height limitation poses practical difficulties for the project. In order to properly illuminate the tennis courts, lighting poles must be situated in such a way that they do not interfere with players' sight lines. Additionally, the applicant suggests that the nature of Old Fort Park, an active park open to the community, makes it unusual when compared to other nearby properties. Staff visited Old Fort Park and observed multiple lighting fixtures that appeared to greatly exceed 20 feet in height. These were most noticeable at the athletic fields and tennis courts near the park's entrance. The location of the proposed lighting is internal to the park and would appear to have minimal, if any, effect on any neighboring property. And based on staff's visit and review of aerial photography, it appears that the proposed lighting would not affect any nearby residential properties. Staff can answer any questions that you may have, and we can review any photographs or site layout if you would like as well.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Anthony now? Do we want to review the aerials? Park.
Okay. What I've pulled up right now is sort of an overall view of the section of tennis courts that would be affected. If you've been to Old Fort Park, you may be familiar with these. The courts at the bottom here, as well as on the right-hand side, those are already illuminated. The affected ones would be the ones on the left-hand side of that photo, as well as the upper portion of the photo. So the site plan submitted by the applicant does show I'm sorry, I'm having some issues with the mouse control here. The site plan submitted by the applicant does show the affected courts. Again, it would be the upper as well as the ones that were on the west side.
All right, thank you. Any questions? Is the applicant anything the applicant would like to add to this application at this point? No. Okay. Seeing none, we'll declare we will now hold the public hearing. Anyone present wishing to speak for or against, please come forward. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and open the floor for further discussion or motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make the motion to approve the variance as presented.
A second.
Have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
I would just like to add it's long overdue. These courts should have been let years ago, and it's high time that we get it done. I'm pleased to see it come forth.
Good deal. All right, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? There are none. That application's been approved. Next, we'll move to application Z16048 by Sean Guth of Lowson Associates, representing the Murfreesboro Parks and Recreation Department, requesting the following two variances for property in the Park District located at 515 Cherry Lane. The first is a 70-foot variance from Section 18G4 of the Murfreesboro Zoning Ordinance, which prohibits lighting fixtures from exceeding 20 feet in height in non-residential developments with structures 35 feet or less in height. The second portion of the application is a variance from Section 18GD of the Zoning Ordinance, which requires outdoor lighting to be designed such that illumination does not exceed 1/2 foot candle beyond the property line. If you'd review that one for us, Mr. Anthony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Murfreesboro Parks and Recreation Department wishes to install 16 new lighting fixtures at Richard Siegel Park, located at 515 Cherry Lane. The new fixtures would illuminate 4 soccer fields, which currently have no lighting for nighttime play. The fixtures would range from 70 feet to 90 feet in height. Section 18G4 of the Zoning Ordinance limits fixture height to 20 feet for non-residential developments with structures 35 feet or less in height. The applicant requests a 70-foot variance from this requirement. Additionally, the applicant seeks a variance from Section 18GD of the ordinance, which prohibits illumination levels from exceeding 1/2 foot candle at the property line. As shown on the photometric plot submitted by the applicant, illumination along the western boundary of the park will reach 2.1 foot candles. The applicant requests a variance from this section of the ordinance in order to allow this excess illumination along the western property line. The applicant contends that the 20-foot height limitation poses practical difficulties. In order to properly illuminate the soccer fields, lighting poles must be situated in such a way that they do not interfere with players' sight lines. Additionally, the applicant suggests that the nature of Richard Siegel Park, with its numerous athletic fields, makes it unusual when compared to other nearby properties. Staff visited Richard Siegel Park and observed multiple lighting fixtures that appeared to exceed 20 feet in height. These fixtures are used to illuminate fields located on the eastern half of the park. Several of these fields do lie adjacent to a residential neighborhood on the south, and planning staff is not aware of any complaints from neighboring residents regarding the lighting heights or illumination levels of these existing lights. The proposed lighting fixtures and excess illumination would appear to most directly affect an adjacent residential property west of Siegel Park. There is a mature tree row between the two properties that may help mitigate some of the excess illumination. However, staff does recommend that the applicant take appropriate steps to ensure as little inconvenience to the neighboring property owner as possible. Specifically, games should end and lights should be turned off at a reasonable hour each night. This request will require 2 separate votes, one for each variance request. Staff can answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions for Mr. Anthony at this point? The fields that are to the north, it looks like Fairmont Drive, those are currently lit.
Correct.
So that neighborhood is already dealing with if there were issues with the lighting there.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. There is to the west of this new area. There is one very long residential parcel with one house on it, and that would be the only parcel I would anticipate that the illumination levels would affect.
And the row of trees between the two is what you were referencing to?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Have they been consulted about the plan?
That I do not know. I don't know if they spoke with the Parks Department. The owner of that particular property did call our department and did express some concerns. I'm not sure if he is here today, but did express some concerns about both the height and any excess illumination. And he was particularly concerned with any noise that might be generated by nighttime play, which would be a new component for this particular area.
How far is the home from the where the lighting would be?
Yeah, it looks like using that scale on the aerial, it looks probably at the closest point to be around 500 feet. I would say somewhere between 400 and 500 feet.
Are there limitations on how long the fields can be used at night, or is it just you have tournaments, I guess, and have some things during the year that may?
Yeah, there are none laid out in the zoning ordinance. That is definitely something that our department would be very happy to work with Lanny and the Parks Department to ensure that these things aren't going on at 11 o'clock at night.
All right, any further questions? Or anything the applicant would like to add at this point? Sure.
Thank you for taking the time to review this application. We did work with our electrical engineers and the sports lighting engineers. The system will be operable and be able to be turned on and off at a moment's notice per the individuals controlling the system. This is part of the original project at Siegel, and there's already existing infrastructure in place for these poles. The poles will simply come in on half of those poles will be placed at the original locations and tied into the electrical that's already on location. So we will be assisting the Parks Department in putting this project out for bid to complete the overall plan for the park. So, thank you.
Okay. The stand of trees there versus the light pole, are they same height, differing heights? Anybody want to know for sure?
The trees there, it's sort of an interesting mix. There are some mature trees there that I would say that they're probably nowhere near 90 feet high. There's a lot of what I would call brush, but it's 15-foot high brush, sort of in that area. It's just stuff that's never been cleared. But I would say that nothing through there is comparable really to the actual lighting height.
Okay. The variance in the foot candles That's at the property line, correct? Not at the...
Correct. But I would, sort of knowing how illumination works, by the time that reaches that house next door, that would be down most likely well below the maximum allowed.
All right. At this point, we'll conduct a public hearing. Is there anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application? Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for further discussion or a motion. And as Mr. Anthony said, we have two components to this application.
My only question, I don't know if there's anybody here from the Parks and Rec, is how late do they play?
$10 p.m. is the typical expectation
Okay.
to be finished. As Mr. Anthony had mentioned, there are occasionally tournaments and things of that nature which could extend that. It would be not a common occurrence.
Okay. And one more question, sorry. So just for people exiting the field, say it did end at 10, do those lights necessarily go off at that point? I'm just thinking, I've been involved in the ballpark at McKnight for many years, and you really can't exit without the lights staying on unless you're the last person to cut. It probably wouldn't be safe, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Yes, sir. That would be
so.
a
Would
safety
that be
consideration.
similar to this too? That until the last man standing, the lights wouldn't go off, or are there internal lights for people to be able to walk? Do you follow what I'm trying to ask?
I do follow what you're trying
Yeah.
to ask. I think when you look at the park as a whole and what is already lighted and how that would function, where the parking lots are, part of that exit strategy, we would not want to turn out lights as people are leaving just for their own safety. The 10 p.m., as you know from being involved in sports, is not an exact time of that the actual game would end. That would be the expectation, and most would be complete by that point.
So the games would end earlier, and 10 p.m. is when you would expect the lots to be cleared of people as well?
The games would typically end earlier. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Is the area in consideration, is that all going to be fields, or is that going to be parking too, where, I don't know, just thinking the illumination, that lighting wouldn't necessarily have to be as high for just parking areas, or is it all intended to be used as fields?
I believe that Mr. Anthony had the design that showed where the illumination points hit
Okay.
in that earlier presentation.
Let me put the photometric back up.
Okay.
Here's the photometric.
All right.
I wasn't sure from that drawing to extend on Mr. Tipp's concern. I couldn't tell if that was just for what was present before the board today, and if there was any parking already present on the field. Is there parking lighting there now, or is that not? There's not any parking lighting.
I don't, in that area, I don't believe that there is. No, ma'am.
Okay, so this would be the only lighting for both the fields and the parking area.
I believe that is the case in that site. Is that, Mr. Anthony? Yes.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing any lights when I went out.
I don't know that I can speak to that with certainty. Where the other lights are.
There are lights in the parking lot that are existing in the parking lot along the road, not necessarily out in the spaces itself, but around the access road of that parking lot. These lights are intended to be installed specifically for the fields themselves.
So do they play soccer there now until it's dark, or has it been used?
No, ma'am. They're in other lighted fields after that point.
Was that your question, Ms. Mosby? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, she answered.
Okay.
These will all be the same height as the existing lights on the front portion of the property, right?
Within 5 to 10 feet of the existing fixtures. The heights of these poles are distance the light has to be thrown to cover the field to get even light across the field without any dark spots for play.
So these are a bit taller than the ones on the other side of the...
Correct. And it's due to the light pole location and proximity to the fields that they are lighting themselves.
Well, the children have to have somewhere to play. I think it's much needed. Keep them off the street.
Have you any pushback from people on Fairmont Drive? Pardon? Yeah.
Any further questions? Thank you. This time, any further discussion or make a motion on the first portion?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the first portion of it, the 70-foot variance, with the conditions set by the staff.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? There are none. So component 1 is passed. Next, we'll move to the foot candle variance.
If there are no further questions or comments, I'll make a motion to approve the second variance regarding foot candle excess, subject to any staff comments.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Then further discussion on that portion. If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? There are none. That's passed. Next, we'll move to application Z16049 by Clyde Roundtree of Huddleston Steele Engineering, representing Deep River Development. They're requesting a 9-foot variance from Chart 2 of the zoning ordinance, which requires a 25-foot minimum rear yard setback for property in the multifamily residential district located at 1019 North Maple Street. Mr. Anthony, if you'd review that for us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Deep River Development wishes to construct 9 townhomes on property located at 1019 North Maple Street. The townhomes would be divided between 2 structures, one with 4 units and one with 5 units. The property is zoned RM16 and has required minimum setbacks of 30 feet on the front, 25 feet on the rear, and 20 feet on the sides. As shown on the site plan, the proposed structure on the western portion of the subject property would encroach into the rear setback by slightly more than 8 feet, necessitating a variance from the required 25-foot rear yard setback. To account for any minor surveying or placement errors and for purposes of the variance request, staff has rounded the encroachment up to 9 feet. The subject property's rear property line is shared with the Koji Express restaurant, which fronts Memorial Boulevard. The portion of the Koji Express property that would be most directly affected by the setback encroachment is currently used as a parking area. During staff's visits to the site, staff observed few cars using this particular parking area. If the variance is granted, the proposed structure would be situated more than 16 feet from the shared property line and approximately 100 feet from the actual restaurant building. It does not appear that the encroachment would directly affect the residential property to the north of the subject property. In the request letter, the applicant contends that both a practical difficulty and unique characteristic exists due to the angle of the rear property line, which tapers toward the northwest corner of the property. This project is currently going through site plan review process, and if the variance is granted, staff will review the site for compliance with all other zoning standards as well. Staff can answer any questions that you may have.
I have one, Mr. Anthony. So the 3 or 4 lots that are to the north of this site in question, they're all commercial highway?
They are zoned.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
All right, any further questions at this point? All right, anything the applicant would like to add at this point? All right. At this time, we'll hold the public hearing. Is anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application? Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for further discussions or a motion.
I'll make a motion we approve, subject to staff comments.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all those approved say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There are none. That application's been approved. Next, we'll move to variance and special use permits. Our first one is application Z16050 by David Biter of Goodwill Industries, making the following requests for property in the Commercial Highway District located at 1825 Old Fort Parkway. This application has two components. The first is a special use permit to allow a temporary mobile recycling center in the Commercial Highway District. And the second portion is an 8-foot variance from Section 31C1 of the Murfreesboro Zoning Ordinance, which limits the length of temporary mobile recycling center receptacles to 40 feet. Mr. Anthony, if you'd review that for us.
Yes, sir. Goodwill comes before the board on an annual basis to seek both a special use permit and a variance for the mobile recycling center located in the Town Center Shopping Center located on Old Fort Parkway. The applicant has operated a collection trailer in the parking lot near Lowe's and Target for several years, and to my knowledge, the planning department has received no complaints regarding the collection trailer. If granted, the special use permit would allow the applicant to continue to operate a temporary mobile recycling center for 1 year. In accordance with Section 31C1 of the ordinance, the applicant would need to come back to the board next year to continue operating the collection trailer. As in years past, the applicant's trailer is still 48 feet in length, necessitating a variance from Section 31C1, which limits trailer length to 40 feet. The board will need to take two separate votes, one for the special use permit and one for the variance. Staff recommends that any approval include the following conditions. Number 1, the semi-trailer shall not be located within a driveway aisle. Number 2, all parts of the semi-trailer shall comply with the minimum 42-foot front yard setback of the CH zone. And number 3, the special use permit shall be valid from August 1st, 2016 until July 31st, 2017. Staff can answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? Anything the applicant would like to add at this point? Okay. Next, we'll hold the public hearing. Is there anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application? Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for further discussion or a motion. We'll start with Section 1.
Mr. Chairman, I would move under Section 1 to approve the special use permit for the next year, subject to staff comments and conditions as outlined.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There are none. That portion's been approved. Next, we'll move to the 8-foot variance of the receptacle.
Mr. Chairman, I would also move that we approve the variance of to 48 feet on the trailer as in past.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. And any opposed? All right, so that application's been approved. Next, we'll move to another application by the same applicant, Z16051 of Goodwill Industries, making the following request for property in the Commercial Highway District located at 1114 Mercury Boulevard. This application has three components. The first is a special use permit to allow a temporary mobile recycling center in the Commercial Highway District. Second portion is an 8-foot variance for the length of the trailer. And the third is a 175-foot variance from Section 31C6 of the zoning ordinance, which requires a 300-foot minimum distance between receptacle and residentially zoned property. If you'd go over that one for us, Mr. Anthony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This request is similar to the last one. The location of this Goodwill collection trailer is 1114 Mercury Boulevard, which is the Mercury Plaza Shopping Center. This trailer, too, has been in operation for several years, and to my knowledge, the planning department has received no complaints regarding the location or the operation of the trailer. To continue operating the collection trailer, the applicant seeks a special use permit to allow a temporary mobile recycling center for a 1-year period, as well as an 8-foot variance from the 48-foot maximum trailer length. Additionally, this trailer is located approximately 125 feet from the nearest residentially zoned property, necessitating a 175-foot variance from Section 31C6, which requires a minimum distance of 300 feet between the receptacle and residential properties. Again, staff is not aware of any complaints or issues related to the placement of this trailer. The board will need to take 3 separate votes, and staff recommends that any approval include the following conditions. Number 1, the semi-trailer shall not be located within a driveway aisle. Number 2, all parts of the semi-trailer shall comply with the minimum 42-foot front yard setback requirement of the CH zone. And number 3, the special use permit shall be valid from August 1st, 2016 until July 31st, 2017. Staff can answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Any questions from Mr. Anthony at this point?
Mr. Anthony, is this the parcel that the Kroger is redeveloping?
It's the parcel that the Kroger has an approved plan for, yes.
Okay. So would this change anything based upon the proposed parking aisles and landscaping that they're putting in as part of that project?
Not that I'm aware. To my understanding, Goodwill has the approval of the shopping center management, which is still there's still ownership and management of that shopping center, and so they are abiding by the approval. I'm assuming that if Kroger does follow through on the redevelopment plans, they'll need to renegotiate that that aspect.
All right. Any other questions?
Is this variance, the third variance of the setback from the residential properties? Is this property, have we approved that variance in the past too?
Yes, these are for some houses that I believe are on 2nd Avenue, which is right across the street. And yes, right. This one I think is up to 8 or 9 years at this point of being approved.
Okay.
All right. Anything the applicant would like to add at this point? Sorry, did you have something else you need to ask? Okay. At this time, we'll hold the public hearing. Is there anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application? Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for further discussion or motion on the 3 components here.
Mr. Chairman, if no further questions, I'll make a motion to approve the special use permit with the conditions set by the staff.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There are none. That portion is approved. Next, we'll move to the 8-foot variance for the trailer.
I'll make a motion that we approve the 8-foot variance subject to staff comments.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There are none. That portion has been approved. Next, we'll move to Section 3.
Mr. Chairman, I move for approval of the 175-foot variance as proposed.
I'll second that.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There are none. All right, that application has been approved. Next, we'll move to application Z16052 by Clyde Roundtree of Huddleston Steele Engineering, representing Mountain Star Properties. They're making the following requests for property in the Commercial Highway District located along the east side of John R. Rice Boulevard. It's another 2-part application, the first being a special use permit to allow a self-service storage facility in the Commercial Highway District, and the second portion of variance from Section 27K3A of the zoning ordinance, which requires a 3-foot minimum landscape strip adjacent to the base of a building along the building sides. Mr. Anthony, if you'd review that for us.
Yes, sir. The applicant wishes to develop a portion of a lot located along the east side of John R. Rice Boulevard as a self-service storage facility. The property is located to the north of the recently approved Texas Roadhouse restaurant and across from John R. Rice Boulevard from the Sam's Club store. The property is zoned CH The applicant seeks a special use permit to allow a self-service storage facility in the CH district, as well as a variance from Section 27K3A of the zoning ordinance, which requires a 3-foot minimum landscape strip along the base of the building. Staff reviewed the site and the site plan for compliance with the zoning ordinance standards for self-service storage facilities. As noted in the staff report, it appears that the site layout complies with these standards. I do want to ask the applicant to confirm that there is sufficient space along all public rights-of-way to install a 10-foot landscape strip. It's unclear whether this can be achieved on the side of the property adjoining the Interstate 40 right-of-way. Beyond that, with regard to the required base of building plantings, the applicant contends that garage doors would hinder the ability to install the 3-foot landscape strip. The board must determine whether this difficulty and the characteristics of the lot warrant a variance from this particular requirement. The board will need to take 2 separate votes, one for the special use permit and one for the variance, and staff can answer any questions that you may have.
All right, any questions for Mr. Anthony at this point? Anything that, if not, we can come back to Mr. Anthony. Anything you'd like to add at this point?
Thank you, Chairman Young. My name is Clyde Roundtree, Huddleston, Steele Engineering. I'm looking at Mr. Anthony's comments on the rear landscape strip. I noticed that little pinch point there. The 28 feet, I believe we can go ahead and modify that radius to allow for the landscape strip. As far as the actual foundation planting, the client has asked that they have service doors all the way along the sides of the building, and therefore the planting strip doesn't allow them to have those access doors. So that's why we're requesting the 3-foot variance from foundation planting.
So this building is different where typically you see a number of buildings in a spot. This is one.
Yeah, this is the trend's really heading towards conditioned storage. So this will be considered a conditioned storage building. So it's a 4-story building. I don't know exactly how their program works in terms of all their functions, but I do believe even those external units they can access from the outside will have a conditioned component to them. So yeah, it's most of it's internal, and we've already worked with staff on one generation of the elevation. They were concerned about some of the presentation, and the client's already modified the plan to make it more palatable for city staff.
A 4-story building.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I've seen one of those. You go in and got an elevator to get all your stuff up.
They do. I mean, it's again, that's where the trend's heading versus the big old sprawling 1-story. They're going into conditioned storage, and most of our clients we're working with are going to have a percentage of conditioned storage, if not the majority of it being conditioned.
So this is going to look similar to the one on in Smyrna near the depot? Do you know?
I don't. I know it's an attractive building, and they've done work all around the nation. So aesthetics is a part of their concern. On the front of the building, they want to have an arbor structure. And we did try to add additional landscaping on the front of the building to make it softer. But yeah, it looks more like a commercial office building than it does a mini storage building.
But there will be a landscape strip on the backside so that the view from 24 will also be palatable.
Yes.
So you're in reference to the variance number 2. All you're saying is that everywhere that we've got access doors, we don't want to put landscaping. Is in essence what you're saying, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Will there be landscaping on the side, like between the sidewalk and the building, where there isn't an access door, or is that?
I think their preference would be not to have that, because it's just there's so many access points. It literally be just chopped up everywhere. And then they wanted to add additional landscaping on the front to kind of make it a nice presentation from John Rice Boulevard.
So will they have they won't necessarily, well, I guess they would. Would they have a fence around this thing or not?
At this point, Ken, they are not anticipating putting a fence around it.
Okay.
It's all controlled access doors.
Within the building.
It really, again, it's an inward facility versus what we're typically used to looking at.
But if we say that, I don't mean to be stupid, but if it's all indoor I thought we were saying that there was outdoor, I'm visioning that the reason why we have a landscape variance is we have
You're right.
means from the exterior, okay, on the base floor. But you don't think they're, I mean,
They don't. I mean, their model doesn't have a...
Really?
Yeah, and I think a lot of that has to do with if you have additional storage for boats and cars and stuff that are outside the units.
yeah.
Well, what is this portion that says truck rental parking?
That's future. They're just, it's been used, it was used as a utility storage area in the past, so it's all basically hard pan. And they may want to one day expand their facility to have truck rentals.
So you'd have to.
Would they want to fence it then?
They may fence that portion, actually, for the storage of that equipment.
Just for storage.
But there would still be a landscape, I mean, there would be the same landscaping buffer, whether or not that's there. On the external,
Yeah, yes.
It's just not shown on the site plan, right?
The landscaping?
Yeah.
the buffer isn't, we don't see it on our pictures.
Between the parking and the truck rental parking?
No, and the.
Anywhere.
The buffers
Except
on
for.
the-
Yeah, all the buffers will be respected. Yeah,
Okay.
It's just not a landscape plan.
Okay.
So you're going to have truck rental parking too?
They just wanted to put that on the drawing because that's a future, they're not in that market right now, but they would love to have the
Okay.
potential if they decide to go that route. Obviously, we'd have to modify the site plan to do that, but they just thought it might be something they get into later. No anticipation of doing it right now.
Is this property being divided? Okay,
It is.
and that's still in process?
Yeah, we work with the city staff to have a joint access with the Texas Roadhouse and some connectivity between those two sites. And then we're trying to make sure that the driveways line up. Rom wanted us to kind of make some sort of try to line up with the adjacent use across the street. And that's why our access points are pretty far apart, because we're trying to make sure we hit. That's a, Donald, is it a cabinet shop? It's some kind of shop across the street, but I don't know offhand.
The Sam's Club?
No, there's another little parcel.
Oh, yeah.
There,
Oh, yeah.
Further past Sam's Club?
Little strip,
little strip
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
multi-use.
It's from a staff perspective, it's an awkward piece of property to work with.
Sure.
I can tell you that.
And so there's and then there's a third piece that would be between the Texas Roadhouse and this property? So this property is being
Yes.
divided into 3 pieces.
Correct. Like Donald said, it tapers down to next to nothing at the very, at the furthest
end.
western point. So we were trying to figure out a way to give them the maximum opportunity and still keep an out parcel that's available for adequate development.
Anything else for Mr. Roundtree?
We're really moving uptown, aren't we?
It looks like a nice place to live, actually. That's a very pretty building. Are the elevations in your packet? by any chance?
We did have
Yeah.
a picture of the,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of unique. It's unique for our context right now, for sure.
right.
Thank you.
Thank you. This time, we'll hold the public hearing. Is there anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application? Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for further discussion or a motion. Again, we have 2 components of this application.
I guess I got a question for
Okay.
staff. If you allow this special use permit for self-service storage facility as it's listed here, and from what he said, this is going to all be internal as opposed to external accesses, what would they be prohibited from changing that design to doing something else that's still a self-storage?
If you grant the special use permit, you are granting a special use permit for a self-service storage facility. It will run with the land for perpetuity. I don't know that you can lock in this particular design.
If they were to add a second building somehow in this piece, isn't that changing the special use permit enough that they would be required to come back?
They would come back, yes.
That cleared up of your...
Not really, but that's, I'm just
My understanding,
thinking-
if there's a significant change to these plans, then they're required to come back to, I assume if the truck rental portion comes up, then they would have to come back
I
to
guess
us.
what I'm referring to, is this building plan already been considered?
If they vary significantly from what's shown here, we'll make sure that they come back before this board. If there's some minor architectural deviation that's not wholly significant to what you passed today, then typically as staff, we work with the applicant on that. But if there is some major change to it, we'll bring it back to you.
And this site plan will have to go before the planning commission too,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Anybody want to tackle the first?
I'll go ahead and make a motion that we approve the special use permit for the self-service store. Hold on. Back to Mr. Tipp's question. Are we approving the truck rental parking since it's on this plot? Or is that just an automatic deal when you say you're allowing a self-service storage facility?
I don't want to put Mr. Ives on the spot. I would say that since it is showing on the site plan as a component of the site, I would think that this would be part of the approval.
I would interpret this as approving outside storage there at that. I don't know that it would be limited to truck rental, but I guess if that's what they've asked for, that's what it would be limited to. We wouldn't be allowed to have boats, RVs, that sort of thing, which you do see in some storage areas. There's an outside area where those things are stored. This would be, I believe this would be approving them to store.
Can you park on the grass?
We have city or zoning ordinance won't allow that.
Right.
Hard surface, hard dustless surface. Yeah.
It's got to be chip and seal or asphalt or something of that nature. It can't be dirt or just rock or grass.
So if those outside paved spaces were to be used for this truck
Yes, they
venture,
would have to
then
pave that space
that would be okay.
to use it for truck rental storage.
What's included in the definition of self-service storage facility according to the ordinance?
I'm not real sure we have a definition.
Does that
I don't know that it
include
defines.
external storage, or is that just, do you see, I guess, I feel like if regardless of what's before us, depending on what's in that definition, it could,
It is a structure or group of structures consisting of individual, small, self-contained units that are leased or owned for the storage of business or household goods or supplies. So the definition does not get into internal versus external.
storage.
Right. And we have, at different times, we've brought to the board internal land decks. The internal is becoming is something of a newer thing, but there have been some that have come in. Usually in conjunction with a larger development consisting of outdoor storage units.
So, okay, I'll go ahead and move forward with my motion to approve, understanding that this truck rental parking is part of the plan. I guess, Mr. Roundtree, my comment would be at site plan, I know this is the Board of Zoning Appeals, but it would have been nice to see, because I have reluctance in approving this because we've already talked about there's not a fence. Well, you're assuming that there's going to be a fence on the truck rental parking, but it's not proposed on the site plan, nor is this buffer we're speaking of on here. I think we probably need to see that at this level. So these folks have a comfort level of what this site's going to ultimately look like, even though I'm not sure you're required to do that. But I think it would be helpful, for the board members for the Board of Zoning Appeals, because all we're doing is proving a special use permit, not knowing how what you're proposing the site to look like, I guess is the best way to say it, other than the building. Yeah.
Sure, please.
Yeah, it looks like it's incomplete.
Right.
I mean, and without it,
Without allowing the storage, because I think if we're going to come back through site planning anyways to add that additionally, I think it was really more of an afterthought on the client's part to say if that would be something they could approve. But that's not their core program at all. And we could just say the building's approved, the mini storage is approved, but right now, if you want to go back and have exterior storage, we're going to need more detail about fencing, buffering, in order to allow that to happen. I think that'd be more than they'll accommodate that. I don't have any issue with that.
Then I'd like to include what you just said in my motion.
Okay.
All right.
So that'd be to approve the self-storage, the building for self-storage, not at this time approving any outdoor vehicle, truck storage of any kind.
Correct.
but doesn't that also, you mentioned, I thought, that there was going to be some landscape buffering around the interstate too, but it's not outlined, it's not shown in the plan?
Right. Any development's going to require a buffer of some sort. If it's a perimeter yard or if it's actually a buffer, it's just based on the adjacent use.
And there's no motion, or there's no application today to vary from that.
Correct.
Before the
Yeah, we're
board.
not asking for an exception from the buffer.
I think to expand on what, I think we're a little spoiled when it comes to landscape plans. Oftentimes, we may not have anything, and we're getting those anyway. And so it is nice to see them, just to be able to see the completed project. And I know that we've received things in the past from you that has a complete landscape detail. And so we appreciate those, and we've missed them today.
Okay.
So I certainly wouldn't want. It seems like it just feels like we're a little bit spoiled. We like seeing how pretty things are going to be at the end of the day. It makes it a lot easier to know when you can visualize that.
All right, we have a motion for the special use permit excluding the truck rental.
I'll second.
And 2 seconds. Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, if not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? So that portion has been approved. Next, we'll move to portion 2, landscape strip variance adjacent to the building.
I'll make a motion that we approve the 3-foot minimum landscape strip, subject to staff comments.
Second.
Have a motion and a second on the second portion. Any comments? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? There are none. That application's been approved. Thanks for your time and comments, Mr. Roundtree. Next, we'll move to staff reports and other business.
I have nothing.
Seeing none, we'll then be adjourned.